Tactical Breach Wizards has taken Steam by storm with an overwhelmingly positive rating, but is it really worth the hype? In this video, we'll break down what the game is all about, the combat, characters, features, and some possible deal breakers that might make it not the game for you. For starters, Tactical Breach Wizards is not your typical turn-based tactics game, and despite the headlines, I wouldn't compare this to the XCOM experience. Missions are comprised of a predetermined squad and a series of small zones that you breach into and clear, some of them only taking a few minutes. In between those zones, the characters and story, which I'll get into next, are fleshed out through conversations and dialogue. That's the entire gameplay loop, and if you think it sounds like it would be repetitive, you might actually be surprised. Tactical Breach Wizards has fantastic pacing, with the focus on smaller, faster encounters keeping the missions from feeling slow or bogged down. The game also introduces a surprising amount of new enemy types, but not so quickly that you're overwhelmed or not equipped to take them on. And even though Tactical Breach Wizards is definitely more of a puzzle-style tactics game, it doesn't hide that, and it doesn't keep you on rails with only one way to finish a mission. In fact, there are customizable difficulty settings that let you tweak your experience, along with some other nice quality of life features I'll talk about later, plus optional objectives in every level if you need more of a challenge. Or, if you just want to get through the missions and story first, you can always come back and run through a previous mission again. The game even lets you skip missions completely if you really want to.
Say what?
As for the combat itself, it uses the standard move and action system, with each character having unique ways to manipulate the action economy and deal with enemies. Each character also has their own set of perks and skills you can upgrade and earn, with no penalty for refunding and respeccing at any time if you feel unsatisfied. And those bonus objectives I mentioned earlier, completing them will give you points to use toward unlocking cosmetics for your squad. During combat, you will be given all of the information you need, what enemies are coming, who they are targeting, and what they will do, and it's up to you to figure out the optimal way to deal with that information. A lot of games in this style tend to pigeonhole you into one strategy or way to move forward, but Tactical Breach Wizards is refreshingly open and flexible. The key mechanic here is the rewind system that shows you how your actions will play out and lets you rewind step by step as often as you want until you commit to ending that turn and make it permanent. Now, you may think that this sounds too forgiving, but it's actually a valuable tool to set up sequences of complementary abilities and actions. Each encounter will play out differently based on how you prioritize enemy targets as well as the order of your actions, with the smaller zones still managing to feel unique from each other and each new puzzle getting more complex as you go on. The breach and combat loop might just hook you before you realize it, but how well does the rest of the game hold up? The characters and story of Tactical Breach Wizards are actually kinda heavy and almost feel like if Tom Clancy took a stab at writing a fantasy novel. Set in a world where military and magic are one and the same, without spoiling anything, I'll just say that the scale of the conflict and story escalates pretty quickly. But there are two things that really stand out. While the story itself isn't anything groundbreaking, the world it's set in and the mix of modern with magic makes it feel different and interesting. Second, the dialogue and characters are extremely sarcastic and don't take themselves very seriously, which can make for a good counterbalance to the plot itself. However, and this is one of the main complaints I've seen, the humor and dialogue is very dry and doesn't really let up. Almost every conversation is dripping with sarcasm or self-deprecating humor, and if that's not really your thing, you might not care too much for the characters or conversations. Fortunately, the developers saw this coming and made it possible to completely skip past any and all dialogue if that's your preference. Obviously, you'll miss out on story and lore this way, but if you just want the gameplay and puzzle tactics part, it is doable. Also, the replayability of the game, which I'll get to next, is not dependent on the story or lore either. Personally, I didn't mind the dialogue, and it had some funny moments, but I can see how the tone would get old quickly for some people.
It's too much!
Tactical Breach Wizards is not a particularly long game either, with the main story clocking in at around 10 to 12 hours for a normal playthrough. Your mileage may vary if you choose to complete all the optional objectives or unlock all of the skins, which makes the base game considerably more challenging. But there is one big feature here that you should be aware of. The game launched with a full open level editor, meaning anyone can make their own maps and challenges. Or if you're like me and want to do that but don't quite have the patience, the community is there and on top of it, with over 100 missions available in the Steam Workshop already. This is a huge addition to a game like this, and the type of thing that can offer replayability and keep you coming back. The $20 price point doesn't hurt either. However, if you are not a fan of snarky characters and dialogue, I would hesitate to recommend this, as the world and lore really goes hand in hand with the abilities and squad. Luckily, in the first 2 hours, you'll be able to see more than enough of the dialogue to understand the tone, and there is a demo available of the first act that you can also try for free. If the puzzle tactics genre is your style, then Tactical Breach Wizards is definitely one of the stronger titles and well worth at least looking at. Check out the channel and subscribe for more turn-based tactics gaming content just like this.